Hey, what's going on, folks? We are up and running and ready to go. Let's get everything switched over and we will kick off today's jam stream. There we go. We got video. Throw on a quick loop I put together before we started for some background music, and we'll talk about what we're going to do today. I see Red Dragon's here. What's up, Red Dragon? How you doing today? On this Sunday, late Sunday for you. All right, sound looks good. Leave everything here, unless I need to switch things up later. So what's on the agenda today? It has been a hot minute since we've done a jam stream. And it's been at least 3 weeks almost since I had a break last week, but it's good to be back. Good to be talking about beatboxing stuff again. Red Dragon says, yep, doing okay. You? Yeah, I can't complain. I wish I woke up a little bit earlier than I did today because I had some stuff I wanted to get done, but other than that, I'm all right. Started working on the garden. There'll be a garden watch update next time someone redeems a fact. But yeah, everything is doing good. So, like we've done on pretty much all the streams, Red Dragon says, didn't you go to bed late? I go to bed late all the time on the weekends. This weekend has been especially bad. I need to fix that next weekend. Going to bed at 5 in the morning is never a good idea. Would not recommend. But I've been working on a lot of project stuff pretty late. That's okay. I just need to go to sleep early tonight because I got work tomorrow. So like the stream caption title says, today we're going to be doing our regular mix of first warm-ups to get everything kind of primed and ready. And then when we get into technique and sound theory, we're going to be returning to the discussion of bass technique and combination of kind of technique overview and really more drills and practice type stuff for bass. One of my favorite topics to talk about in beatboxing. And it's been a minute, and not a whole lot's changed technique wise, but I did want to sort of talk through a little bit about the practice and drill side of bass development, bass techniques, and go through that stuff since, again, it's been a little bit. After that, we will switch over to our regular BGM brainstorming. And again, it's been a while. I haven't had a chance to sit down and tinker around with the loop lately, but we'll be using our regular combination of instruments. I do have the synth hooked up. It's ready to go. It's just not on to reduce the feedback. But what we'll do is we'll see what we can come up with for upcoming projects and some ideas and some specific styles I want to try. I see Red Dragon has gone ham and redeemed Wheel of Styles, Drop a Beat, Raku Faktu, and a small Raku. You're burning all your points today, man. All right, I will say, and let me pause the loop track here. For Wheel of Styles, I wouldn't redeem Wheel of Styles and Drop a Beat at the same time unless you want me to do two specific beats back to back. If you redeem Drop a Beat, normally I have to do something, but because we're going to be doing a lot of just regular freestyling on the jam stream, if you're going to get Wheel of Styles, you're going to get a beat. So I guess for your redeem, I'm going to do two of them. I'll do one randomized and then I'll do one just off the cuff. But you don't necessarily need to burn stuff for Drop a Beat if you're going to do Wheel of Styles unless you want to. I can reject your drop a beat one since that one's more expensive. Let me go pull it up. I'll just kick it back because you're gonna get one for the Wheel of Styles already. Let's see where are you? No, it's gonna be down the bottom. Yeah, bottom. Let's refund drop a beat. We'll keep the other ones. Close that. You should get your points back. We'll do the. Let me turn on small. Do that first. I'll put myself right next to the SOTS promo, and we'll see how long it takes me to remember to turn that back on. Fact. I should leave this here. For fact, I mentioned I was going to do a Garden Watch update. So your fact right now is the first Garden Watch update of the season. This weekend, I acquired 2 basil plants. They're 2 small pot plants that I just started taking care of. That's what I was doing before I went live on stream. I was trimming them a bit. So right now, the garden's got 2 basil plants. It's got a rosemary bush, which I still don't know if it's dead yet. I think it might be dormant. And a couple green onions. Next time I have to buy some, I'm going to plant more. So not a ton of things yet. I will be getting a cherry tomato plant later in the season. But right now, we've only got a few things. But I am doing an experiment with the basil this year. Again, I don't know if you folks care, but last year my basil got absolutely destroyed by bugs. This year I'm keeping one pot inside, just near my window, and the other one I'm putting outside like normal. And we'll see which one does better. But hopefully we have a good season. It's been cold where I live. Usually it starts to get warmer this time of year, but it's been cold. So hopefully we have a decent warm season for plants that like warm weather, but we'll see. All right, now for the wheel. I haven't had to pull this up in a while. Let's put this here, and I should be able to grab this in Chrome. Hold on, let's see. Why is it not popping up? No, Firefox. That's not Firefox. That's what we want. Here we go. All right. So we have the Wheel of Styles. It's been, again, a hot minute. I figured I'd turn this one on for today since it's been a while. But just to recap for those who haven't seen it, the Wheel of Styles is a random wheel with a bunch of different genres of music on here. I'm going to spin the wheel, and then whatever lands on it, I've got to freestyle a beat in that style or genre. So let's see. Survey says wow, that's loud. Okay, electro dance. So an electro dance type song. All right, I could do that. Red Dragon says, yeah, I was wanting a Japanese bonsai. Those are a lot of work. I've never taken care of one, but those are a lot of work. Let's see. Hold on. I got a bunch of messages here. Let me figure out. I haven't had to do this yet. I see. These aren't posting to chat, looks like. Yeah, I'm just taking a look at the mod list. I don't know if I can do anything about that. But yeah, Capri Sun, if you're listening, I don't think your chats are being posted because of the shared band thing. Give me one sec. Yeah, I think as long as I have that enabled, if you're banned in one of the shared ban lists, it looks like it will restrict your chats from showing up in my streams, which I haven't seen this happen before, but that would be why. Okay. I don't think I could do anything about that for now, unfortunately. But I might have to look into that later off stream. Okay. Before we get started, let me turn off the small mode and the time it took to run the randomizer and get everything set up. Actually elapsed. Yep, no. That's not what I want to V2 Studio. Don't do that. Okay. I have the wheel here that I can pull back up if I need to. All right. So we had an electro dance type beat. Sorry, I had to juggle a bunch of things at once, but I think we're good now. So we'll get this one started. Then we'll go into some kind of warm up practice stuff. I might just stitch a couple of the beats together just to save time, but we'll go ahead and get started. Let's do it. Let me grab a drink. Mouth's getting dry. Looks like still coming in blocked. Capri Sun, if you're watching. All right. Continuing on with the idea of warm. Actually, we'll just go right into technique sound theory. We'll kind of blend them a little bit here. That'll be fine. Let me update my caption for now. Technique. Technique sound theory. And we will kind of switch between just going and talking about warm up to the actual technique sound theory stuff I wanted to cover today. Give me one sec. Okay, let us proceed here. Like I mentioned before at the top of the stream, and we mentioned it earlier in the week, and I figured I'd run with the idea. I wanted to loop back on the discussion of bass techniques and how it applies to beatboxing and some of the kind of practice related stuff that I've been testing out and experimenting with as far as ways to kind of train technique and get better. I'm kind of switching my focus for my beatbox stuff off content to kind of reinforce basics. I feel like I haven't had a structure for practicing and training stuff. It's just kind of been whatever as I've had time. And I'm going to be focusing a bit more on kind of more of like the drill and training aspects because I feel like my basics are getting a little bit dull. And I want to, one, stay sharp, and two, kind of push technique and get better, not just maintain. And so that's something I'm going to be kind of tinkering around with off stream because, again, aside from these jam streams, when we get together to talk about beatboxing, I don't really spend a lot of time going through the practice and whatnot in a, again, regimented environment. I just sort of practice whenever I have time when I'm not busy doing something else. And we'll see how it sort of maps out several months from now, into the future. Ideally, we'll be able to see a bit more progress and more development of all the techniques and stuff rather than just sort of even keel maintaining and not really progressing. We don't want to get in a rut and get stagnant. I've also been putting a bit more of an emphasis on inward bass training. So that is going to be showing up at some point in the future, kind of a dedicated jam stream, I think, because I want to be able to show off more with that technique since it's one I'm not good at. But I don't want to be able to do that on stream with you folks until I feel like I have a good command of the technique and I can do it effectively. And so we'll be talking about that one in the not too near future. Hey, Snake's here. Snake says, yo, how's it going? Oh, we're doing good, Snake. How are you on this Sunday, near end of April? Hope everything's going all right with you. We're getting ready to talk about bass technique in beatboxing. So feel free to kick back, relax, and vibe with us on the jam stream. So the first one I wanted to talk about a little bit is what I consider kind of the first major technique when it comes to the vocal bases that people learn. We've talked about it pretty frequently here on the jam stream, so I won't really break down the technique so much. But for throat bass, the first one usually that people learn when they're doing the sung or throat based sounds for bass technique, usually throat bass. just because once you get that technique down, you can expand it into some of the more advanced ones, which we'll talk about here. We'll go through several of the different vocalized basses and how I've been trying to emphasize practice and not just, using the technique over and over again to try and get better at it. So the throat bass one is one that sounds like it is the most restrictive on the vocal cords when it comes to like a tightness or looseness, which is how you get the upper register sounds going from like going even upper to pushing it higher than that is difficult for me. So I do want to focus on the range as well from high to low, but just doing the technique in the beginning, like we've talked about here on the stream, does strain your vocal cords. And over time, as you build endurance and you practice more, you get more conditioning and endurance and it gets easier. One thing that's going to be tough to deal with today is because we'll be dealing with a lot of bass discussion, it's going to wear my voice out more than just a regular stream where I don't spend a lot of emphasis on bass, but that's okay. Now, I feel like I know throat bass pretty well. It's one of the first ones I learned that wasn't like a lip-based or non-vocalized sound. But it doesn't mean there isn't room to continue to refine the technique and get better at it. If anything, endurance and increasing that conditioning so that I can do the sound for longer and more frequently without it stressing my voice quite as much. But we talked before about how to structure drills and practice for that sound in order to, again, just keep conditioning your different parts of your anatomy to get used to making a sound that's very not standard. We don't walk around making throat-based sounds, obviously. And so a good example of one of the drills that I've been adapting, trying to perfect, or at least come up with a good way to explain, actually goes back to Red Dragon's Drop a Beat that he redeemed. I had to do like a dance electro-ish type beat, so went with a real kind of stereotypical like 4/4 single kick type beat to start with, but I mixed in a little bit of the bass to give it kind of low end like you would hear in something that's got like a techno-ish type sound, dance type sound. And so I feel like that could be used as a drill on its own, just a real simple kick, maybe kick plus snare plus bass combination when you're just starting out and learning the technique. Would be a good way to force yourself to get used to doing the sound, not just on its own, just doing like the on its own, but actually plugging it into something simple and just practicing that over and over again until you get muscle memory and used to the feel. And so if we think back to roughly what we did, I think we did single kick and a K snare. So it'd be like with the hat. Hat doesn't really matter in this case, but if we do like a real simple, like techno-ish electronic type beat in quotes, you might have something like, and that on its own for practicing just the core sounds is a good drill to run through because it's forcing you to construct the beat, stay on time, and be consistent like we've talked about before. But if we add in the bass as part of that repetition, that cycle as it's going forward, I guess it probably makes sense to do it on the kick. So maybe like and again, sounds relatively simple, but when you're first starting out and you're trying to get a good command of the bass sound itself, and it's difficult to do, just starting with a more basic pattern of sounds and doing it over and over again is going to, again, force your body to learn, and it'll become more second nature when it comes to how you do the sounds, and then you can transition your brain power from just the doing the sound to what I want to do with the sound, if that makes sense. Red Dragon asks, how can you make noise? The third one. Are you talking about the third sound in the set, in the practice beat I was doing? So I guess if you think of the bass kick and the bass drum kick and the bass sound as one, then it's really only two, if that makes sense. I'll explain. So you're doing the bass kick and the bass sound very, very close together, so they sort of blend into one. So what I mean by that is you have not you can do it that way if you want to stagger the rhythm, but you're basically doing the kick and the vocalized sound at the same time, which is a layering technique you learn as you go, which is also good practice to be able to do. So you're doing the actual kick and you're doing the bass tone at the same time. So that's how you're getting a. If you practice that on its own, it's actually a very, very useful and kind of elementary layering technique that a lot of people pick up early on, because you can apply that to a lot of things. But you have that and then the hat and then the kick. So that's how you're getting a. And that, like, advanced layering stuff, we could definitely talk about in a future discussion, because the complexity definitely goes up. But depending on what exactly you're practicing, you could structure your sound patterns such that you could even have the sounds being concurrent. It's a different technique, which is why I'm not really going into it in detail right now. But by structuring things in a way where you can kind of combine sounds together and or do different sounds at different parts of your anatomy at the same time, that's how you're getting that kind of simultaneous layering. This simple beat's not the best example of that, because the only thing that's really layering is the kick and the bass tone. Well, I guess you could move it if you wanted to have it be on the off sound with the snare. I'm trying to think how that would work. Yeah, there you go. So if you move the bass tone to the snare, the K snare, then you're doing the K snare and you're doing the vocalized stuff at the same time, because you can use your vocal cords separate from your tongue. And I know that's kind of a weird way to describe it, but you have the tongue-based sound, which is the snare, and then the actual bass tone, which is that's a simple throat bass with a lip filter to give it more of a round, distorted sound. And so the three sounds become, instead of two on the first one with the kick, it's two on the snare. Again, hopefully I'm explaining this clearly enough. So instead of it being, it becomes, and again, that's utilizing layering to put the sounds together. And I guess it's not a bad sidebar to go off on, so we could talk a little bit about it, but I won't get too technical with the layering things. It primarily comes down to how you're directing where the sounds come out of on your mouth. You could technically change the snare to a BGM for sure would work. PF snare would be a little bit difficult. You wouldn't be able to do it with an inward K. And so if we think about the bass tone on the snare, just the same example, and we did it with a PF snare, we'd have to do it's about the same degree of complexity as doing it with the K snare, but you're doing a different movement or technique. You have the tongue-based one versus the lip-based PF snare, which is but same idea. You're combining the bass tone and the snare into essentially one sound really close together, so it sounds like it's being done simultaneously. Now, if you do that with a BGM snare, the really sharp clap type sound, that one's a little bit, to me, easier, because you can go for like a hummed note and take the sound completely away from coming out of your mouth, because you have to do it with your lips. So if you did that, it would sound like And it sounds a little bit segmented. If I really push it and drilled it, I could probably get that where they're essentially on top of each other. We talked a bit in a previous stream when we were looking at layering as a technique specifically, where if you're taking the sound like a vocalized throat bass, for example, that's what we're using here, and you force it out of your nasal cavity like you're humming, just using the throat technique and directing it through your sinuses, it goes from coming out the mouth to which is coming out of the nose, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you do that, it frees up your mouth to be able to do other sounds because the sound's coming out of your nose. And so you could do something like having a kick that doesn't use your mouth is a little bit tougher. It's, I think, what they call not a dry kick. It has another name, but basically you're just using your lips to make the kick drum sound. That's a bit more difficult, but you can still do like a regular standard drum kick and use like the humming and redirection of the sound while layering it with a snare. And again, I know it's kind of a weird, convoluted way to describe it, but the outcome would be if you took slightly different beat and did like bass plus kick plus snare and you layer it all together, you get something like and the snare itself, the BGM in this case, is not interrupting the bass because it's being done with the lips and the bass sound is coming out of your sinuses and it's sustained. You get really good at it, especially doing kicks that don't involve using any sort of high pressure. You can make that sustained note basically sound completely uninterrupted, and it's a really impressive layering technique. I'm not the best at it. I'm trying to get better, but you can basically divide up which parts of your anatomy are doing which sound and have everything going at the same time. It's one of the coolest things that you can learn in beatboxing. It's just rather difficult to do. But maybe we'll get back to layering in the future. That's something I should probably talk about more. But as it relates to the drills and practicing, so the bass sound specifically, we talked about like combining it into like a layering pattern. But even outside just doing that, practicing the tone and learning how to change the way the bass tone sounds is also really good practice. So for example, we talked about long sustained notes, things like just having the bass tone go for a certain amount of duration, change, maybe it goes up or down, but also a rhythmic bass pattern is really good practice because it's a little bit more difficult to do and control, but it's as simple in its basic forms as using your tongue to change the rhythm of the bass notes. And so again, might be a somewhat simple example, but if we think about the bass sound on quarter notes, taking the and breaking up into quarter notes using your tongue, you get and the more you use your lips and your tongue to sort of sharpen the cutoff, instead of it sounding really soft, you can make it sound more like a staccato type rhythm where it would go something like and again, that sounds really simple, but when you're first learning beatboxing in the beginning and you're trying to develop muscle control and muscle memory, it's going to be a very unusual combination of things that your mouth anatomy is doing. And so you won't have precision when you're first learning. So it's good practice to experiment around with using like your tongue to change the rhythm of the sound once you feel comfortable enough to be able to do the sound. I would say practice doing the sustained bass notes first and get your throat conditioned. And after your throat can handle the strain and won't get, tired and you lose your voice, then you start messing around with, okay, how I'm going to manipulate the sound itself. And that's where you can start doing things like messing with the rhythm. So if we ratchet up the complexity a little bit further and we take the sound and we want to make the bass notes faster, same note, but but a faster rhythm. Again, using your tongue as the sort of break in the sound, you would go from do 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 do, which is quarter notes, to more of a rapid. And I'm doing the sound again with a kind of closed lip filter because that's the way I like to distort that particular type of sound. To me, it sounds the most comfortable for me. But you start messing around with refining that type of distortion, and all of a sudden you're doing like a synthwave bass to it, which is what I use whenever I've got to do like a type of synthwave inspired type sound. You know, something that's very kind of retro-ish sounding. It has that synth bass, but it has kind of a punctuated rhythm to it, which drives the tempo of the song, which is why I like synthwave. It just has this futuristic kind of retro but modern sound, and that's how you're getting something that would be like, and that's eighth notes. In addition to just adding rhythm to the bass itself, you start experimenting with, okay, I'm going to change the pitch, have the bass go up or down, and that's how you get the bass line to one of my BGM tracks from Titanium Forest, Linear Cannons. And that one has the bass line that's same rhythm, very similar tempo, in fact, but it goes up and it goes down for like one note, and it sounds like. And it goes up and like, and so forth. You start messing around with the control of the pitch. You can basically make it do whatever you want. If you want to go ascending, then descending, or like an arpeggiated scale, pretty much anything after you get comfortable with changing the rhythm. And of course, it comes down to control and practice. But if you want to have a multiple change the baseline notes, as it were, and have that correspond with the rhythm that you're doing, then that really simple sustained single note would be something like, just kind of a random example, we have, and that's just, you know, going up several steps upwards and then starting over. It's ramping up. And so that's, again, a really good way to just practice the control and the distortion aspect after learning the technique itself. And I think I'll move on to the next one, which is going to be kind of a similar exercise, but a different bass sound in the set. And that is vibration bass, the cousin for throat bass. Like we've talked about before, vibration is one of my favorites. I've been trying to drill that one more. Let me grab a drink real quick. I've been trying to drill that one more so I can develop the sound even more than I currently have. But taking the throat bass and pushing it lower to get more of a reverberation in the vocal cords is how you go from the kind of tight, controlled throat bass, dropping it down, you get and it allows you to be able to push lower in the register for bass sounds, and the lower you go and relax your vocal cords, the more kind of resonance and rattling you get. It's a really powerful sound, but it takes a lot of practice to be able to do. And so when it comes to the drills and practice aspect for vibration bass, I tried to think what made the most sense to explain here on the jam stream. And the best example I can think of would be to push the lowest end of your bass range until you can get vibration bass to come out. And then from there, apply the same techniques we talked about with the higher throat bass and just develop the control until you feel really comfortable doing it. And so if we take let's take the techno dance-ish beat example and apply it to vibration bass. It's the same technique or the same structure, just a slightly different technique because it's forcing your throat to work in different spots. So if we took the how you would apply that to a vibration bass type of training is you're just going to push as low as possible and force your range to stay in that lower register to get the sound to come out and be controlled. So you might have something like and even that, with me being pretty familiar with the technique, I've got to sort of force my brain to think about maintaining control, because it's a tougher sound to do than the higher one, which I don't really have to think about as much. But you can also mix up the rhythm and distortion for vibration bass the same way you do in the higher throat bass example. I would say it's definitely tougher to do because, again, it's a bit more of a straining technique to do. But if you take the and just work on making it more rapid. So, like synthwave example again, we're gonna drop a lot lower, and so that would sound like. I could already feel that it's not quite as clean and controlled as the higher ones. If you compare it to like the kind of in the middle of my range, I could do that a lot easier, but doing it really low is tough. And so that tells me I need to train the lower end as far as possible and get better at doing that, so I can have that sound be as consistent as the one that's more comfortable. And so kind of the takeaway from the bass discussion, I think, is one, find your comfort level and establish that when you're first learning to get control over the techniques. And then once you have that comfort level, start pushing out of that comfort level to force your anatomy and your body to adapt to the more difficult techniques or difficult sound combinations with things like the rhythms. I guess it sounds like a really simple piece of advice, but the best thing to do is to not get stuck in your comfort zone, whether it's any sort of skill. It's not just beatboxing, obviously. If you're trying to learn any sort of skill, you want to make sure you're pushing yourself outside of what you feel comfortable doing, because it'll force you to adapt and grow. Here, let me drop this down over here. Okay, keep this here. So if we think about vibration bass when it comes to other types of training besides just rhythm, tempo, and kind of the patterning of it, as we did that for the throat bass, vibration bass is kind of the same lesson. Another thing would be training distortion. And I don't just mean like the rhythmic distortion. I mean getting used to changing your mouth patterns to actually affect the sound a lot more than just changing its rhythm. And that's not really anything groundbreaking that we've talked about before. But if we take the really low bass sound as much as possible, like a, that's kind of my lowest, my comfort zone for vibration bass. Pushing it lower, that's kind of the floor. I'd like to be able to get even lower with it, but again, it takes practice. But in addition to just changing the rhythm and how it comes across, by changing your mouth position, you can add audible distortion to the sound itself. And while it's not really that quote unquote difficult, it's good practice to just be comfortable doing so that you can have that tool at the ready if you want to use the sound. So what does that mean? If we take the, which I have my lips in kind of a pursed, very small opening, like a ooh, to get it to rattle and reverberate a bit. If I open my mouth, it's going to go like a wow type sound. And so instead of just a, we get wow. And that's bordering on vocalized chest bass, which I'll get to in a minute. I have to be really careful because the two techniques get very close together because of their sound range. But just playing around with mouth position and learning how to manipulate the sound audibly instead of just with a rhythmically, you can do a lot of really cool things like taking the and then figure out how you want to change the sound to either fit a pattern, routine, or however you want to actually use it. You might want something that has kind of this oscillating oscillating pattern to it. So it's not just a flat note. It's going to sound like it's bending or moving up and down. You think of things like a dubstep type drop or a really aggressive change up in like a heavy type bass sound. And again, really stereotypical example, but if you have like a dubstep drop that's like, and you want to have that texture to it, then just changing the mount position on the bass sound itself does that very effectively. And if you practice that level of control and messing around with it, then it can give you just another tool when it comes to putting together things on the fly and doing your patterns and routines. Here. Grab another drink of my smoothie. And to sort of tie in the discussion of the different kind of drill methods for practicing both the rhythmic changes to the bass sound and the pure distortion itself, you could kind of combine the two together. So instead of just having like that low bass sound, like a wow, 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 you combine it with more of a rapid type of rhythm, and you're getting something like that's probably something that's going to fit more towards like a synthwave type of sound. But combining those two different ways of changing the sound is going to force your brain to deal with thinking about multiple things at the same time. Pretty handy, and I'd say when you're trying to develop your skill set as a beatboxer, trying to program all that into your brain is good practice in general. It's what the pros do. And when people are just learning, once you get a good grasp of the basics, we talk about basics a lot when it comes to beatboxing, but once you have a good grasp of the basics, then you start figuring out ways to challenge yourself to apply those basics in different ways. And a lot of it's just experimenting around with the combination of sounds and whatnot. And it's really kind of an endless journey. I think if you're serious about developing beatboxing skills, there's always something to practice, fine tune, or if you feel like you've kind of hit a plateau as far as progression, something we're not really going to get into today for the discussion, but another way to continue growing your skill set is to learn something new. Either learn a new sound or develop a new sound set and give yourself something new to practice so that you're not just stuck doing the same old thing over and over again. That's actually one of the reasons why I enjoy technicality as a concept so much in beatboxing, because there's always a new combination of sounds that you can try and see if it works, and then it gives you something new to practice. Good example, just as a sidebar on the technicality side, we have talked a lot about the POTO technicality combination that I've been practicing and working with since last year. I can't remember when I started messing around with it, but using the pops and the tongue clicks to take like it's called POTO because it's two sounds repeated one time for four. So you get them, which you hear me do in my freestyles every once in a while. And I've been trying to drill that one the same as the other technicalities so I can get faster with it. And I am seeing that happen as I've been practicing it, which has been kind of cool to monitor and see. Not quite where I want it yet, but if we take just them and just practicing those over and over again in a loop, which is, I know, repetitive and tedious, but that's how you gain speed proficiency with technicality. If we take that and just try and push it as fast as possible, maybe 8 months ago when I was doing it, I couldn't do it continuously for very fast, and still it's pretty difficult. But if I really push it, try and do that combination, it sounds kind of like, and that roll is something I couldn't do 8 months ago. I could do it decently fast in like one set. Just be able to do like, but that would be difficult on its own. But as I've been practicing it more, being able to do it sustained just means I've been able to develop the speed with it. And I'm hoping to be able to get even faster than that to make it so that's a really condensed, fast pattern of technicality I can slot in different places and have it fill less space. But that's, again, it's just practice over time to get your anatomy conditioned in doing the sounds, then you push it faster and faster. And so same thing applies to bass techniques and bass training. And before we move on to BGM brainstorming, I did mention I was going to talk about vocalized chest bass, which is done differently than the regular vocalized ones, which is why I left it to the end. But that's the one that combines the chest, the really low rattling chest bass that you can literally feel in your chest. That's where the name comes from. And you're taking that rumble and combining it with just a sung or hummed vocalized note. No distortion like a throat or vibration bass. Just a note layered with the rumble, and that's how it goes from to. And I found that vocalized chest bass, for all the external ones, not inward basses, vocalized chest gets me the lowest note I can possibly do. And I think it's because of the rumble, which helps the distortion push lower than when your vocal cords are constricted more with the throat and vibration. So pushing absolutely as low as possible with the vocalized chest bass, you get, and I need to push more drilling with that to get a bit more of the rumble to come through audibly. But how it flows into the practice side, for the sake of the discussion here today, is the exact same thing, starting with prolonged sustained notes and then working on getting them into more of a distorted or a rhythmic pattern to, again, force that conditioning. And so I tend to do like the whoa, 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 whoa. It sounds like a wow type sound, but I need to get better at doing it more rapidly, which is difficult because that sound pushes really low and it takes a ton of air to be able to do vocalized chest bass. The in itself is almost like lung emptying amount of air. So unlike the other ones where you can kind of conserve air because you're constricting your airway, for vocalized chest bass, you are pushing like everything out at once almost. And it can be really good when you're trying to get rid of a lot of air that you've breathed in. We talked about intake versus output in air control and breathing. But at the same time, you're trying to do a lot of notes. You have to really be careful on that vocalized chest bass because you'll run out of air if you're not careful. But taking that whoa, 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 and then playing around with the texturing on it too is kind of fun because it's such a low rumbling note and where it operates. If you push it really low in your register, you can mess around with the distortion to give it that kind of, again, dubsteppy low bass drop type sound. And the best way I can recommend to practice that is just to push as low as possible, get it under control, and then try and break up the sound, either using like a tongue rhythm or using like your mouth to kind of cut off and round the way the texture sounds. That's a bit more difficult. I would say people first getting started in beatboxing are probably not going to gravitate towards vocalized chest bass because it's a difficult sound to make. But if you can get control over that one, it gives you a whole lot of options for lower register sound. You can do it higher too. It's a completely different type of training to do vocalized chest high. For that one, if you're going something like that's the Marge Simpson. We talked about that one before when I was first breaking down how you take that sound and you just do a high note. The rumble stays the same. You're not changing anything with the rumble. It's still a really low sound, but instead of the hum note being lower or in the middle, it's really high. So going for like a hee, plus you get a, and that's also can be used the same way. You can use it for a lot of, like, again, works well for drops if you're trying to do like a higher distortion sound as part of that heaviness, but training that feels very different from trying to do the low version. So I would say do both. Give yourself options when it comes to how you can get the sound to come out, and figure out ways to make it work for the different types of beats you want to create, which is, again, generic piece of advice, I know, but doing that will, at least, like I said, give you options and tools to be able to draw from when you're putting things together, either in a freestyle or a structured pattern or routine that's going to be performed and, like, done for people or for a song, content, what have you. And so, coming up at the top of the hour, I think that's a good stopping point for the bass discussion. I think bass is one of those things that there's always something new to learn. The more melodic and other offshoots of vocal bass, like vocal bass specifically, that technique, is something I need to practice and get good at so I can talk about it here. I'm not really a melodic beatboxer. It's not usually what I gravitate to, but I would like to develop that skill set to give myself some more options. And so hopefully next time we talk about bass, I'll be able to go over more things that I've learned or developed. And for sure, we'll be looking at doing inward bass. Again, I think I want to do a dedicated jam stream, specifically focusing on that for a while when I feel like I can do the technique effectively, because it's very different. Similar concept, but the results for inward bass compared to the outward vocalized ones we've been talking about on the stream today, it's just different capabilities. I know my inward bass goes lower than all of my external ones just by default. I'm not that good at it. Oh boy, voice crack. And so it'll be a discussion we return to in the future. Every couple months or so, I think it'd be good to check in on the developing bass sounds and see where we're at and see what kind of stuff we can talk about. So let me change the caption. I'm going to have to switch my mic over to my regular Scarlett, but we will move on to BGM brainstorming. There we go. And so let me switch my mic input over, and then I'll turn the synth on, and we'll make sure everything's synced up, and then we will start coming up with some ideas for future BGM tracks. All right. This is going to come across, I think, a little bit louder. I think my OBS settings have my Scarlett a little bit louder than my loop. I did tone it down last time I streamed, but let's get the synth turned on. I got to enable one more sound source here. I'll turn the basic boosts off of the loop since we don't need those on the synth. Now we can test it to make sure. Yeah. It'll be about 50% seems to be our good working volume to reduce the amount of distortion. A little bit louder wouldn't hurt, but we'll keep it there for now. And let me check a couple things here, make sure we're good, and then we'll jump right into it. Okay. So I mentioned I had some ideas for things I wanted to tinker around with on the BGM side today. And I think the first thing I want to experiment with style-wise is going to be a chill track, more kind of mellowish sound, since I do want to put together a release for potentially later this year in, I'm going to say, before the end of summer is my next tentative target. It's going to depend on some of the stuff that I need done. So let's start with something chill. And I feel like my keyboard is further away than normal. So you're going to see me, or see my model kind of wig out a little bit every time I got to look over there for my keyboard. But let's start with the jazz kit. And for the beat, I need to be a little bit careful because if I don't want to recycle the same rhythms. Especially across multiple different releases. And I know for like the lounge and the other type of more mellow, chill tracks, doing something like I've done a couple different permutations of that beat before, so we need to be careful. I did like the idea of it still kind of falling in the wheelhouse of like trip hop type sounds because I really like that style. So that's kind of where that's coming from, but let's try and switch it up a little bit, but keep the same kick and the rim shot sound. Might be able to layer it. Oh, we could do something like that and slow it down. Yeah, I don't think I've done one that sounds quite like that. If we add in some other instruments around it, that'll definitely flesh the sound out. So let's get that captured and start playing around with the combination of instruments. Okay. We could add in a bit more mute. I gotta be careful not to move too far away from the mic when I talk. Maybe drop the mix down a little bit when we add in the hi-hat. We started on the ones. And then come in between the snare. It's off slightly though. Oh, I need to watch the playback too. Let's keep the playback about. We'll keep it about here and let me know if I need to turn it up or down if you can't hear me. I was thinking about maybe adding in like a brush, like a hat brush. This is the brush kit. I don't remember where it is though. You can even add this is a ride. Maybe rapid would be a little distracting, I think. Oh, very, very faint. I don't think I like having that in the background, so it's not quite as distracting. Okay, I think that's a good start. Now for bass line, since we normally go rhythm, bass line, and then melodies. I think it'd be good to have something that does have significant low end to give it more sort of push, but not quite like an aggressive heavy bass line. So I think we can go guitar to bass, but maybe go 25% instead of like 50. Let's see what we can do with that. And instrument-wise, I was thinking about this earlier. Strings, we've done a lot. We've done a lot of strings as the bass line. What if we went for a wind instrument, like a woodwind instrument? Like something in the flute instrument subset. I know there's an oboe on here. I kind of wanted to see what a low-end oboe sound put through with the bass boost sounds like. Let's kind of figure out where it is. Oh, it's with the reeds in like the saxophone section. So oboe. With a little bit of bass boost, the high end with the oboe doesn't really sound that significant. You can hear it distorting a bit, but if we go low, which oboes aren't really a low instrument, so I don't even know if this is a natural register for an oboe, but there we go. We could go for something that's lower, and let's see how's the distortion change if we up the... Oh, that's not bad. We need to drop the volume a little bit, though. Now, that progression, I think, is going to be kind of similar to some other ones we've done, but I'm kind of messing around the direction I want the bass melody to go. So let me noodle around with some things here, and then we'll see if we can get it captured and match that up against what we got so far. That's not bad. Let's try that. Whoops. I'm gonna cut it off at the right point. Has kind of a more kind of dark sound to it. A bit more ominous and kind of oppressive. Don't dislike it. But if we go to the actual bass sounds and we pair the melody with another instrument that has a bit more of just the actual like electric bass type sound, you can see how that combines and plays out. So let's see, I want to go dance bass is kind of my go-to for the regular sounding bass. Oh, I think I'm gonna drop the boost on it though.
So this is what I mean by layering in the similar notes. This is 1 octave up than the one I was doing with the oboe itself, but same progression. But I think I'm gonna drop this volume down so it doesn't completely overshadow the first layer. There you go. That's about 25%. I think that might actually be enough for the bass line. It's just 2 instruments. But I think it kind of meshes together decently well. So let's see what we can kind of flesh out and build along with the bass line for the first synth. Or first melody, rather. It'll be some sort of synth, obviously. Could go for a more kind of brassy-ish sound, or we could even go for like a sax. I jumped over to the saxophone preset to mess around. Let's see what we can do. This is a tenor sax. Oh, we want to go higher up. Really simple, 3 notes. Not bad. What if we put a filter distortion over it to give it a bit more texture? Not bad, not bad. All right, let's capture that and add it together. Ooh, could add a harmonizing part to it. That's got potential. I don't dislike the way that sounds. Maybe drop the mix down a little bit so it's not quite on the same volume. Yeah, I'm gonna add that in. There's a kind of a harmonizing melody that comes in for the beginning, and then it drops down in the same note progression at the end. So it's only at the beginning you hear that kind of harmonizing. Okay. So let's see if we can add another higher synth on track 4. I'm gonna mess around with Slicer a bit, see what we can do. This one is called Analog Gone. That's got to be short for something, analog something. But adding the slicer to this creates a really cool effect. I think we can do something with this, but I want to come with a melody that's not identical to a couple of the other ones that we've had on other tracks. Could do a 2-note step. Let me jump up higher. Ooh, doing 1 step down is not bad. We could even have it be a really prolonged alternate melody too. Let's add that in and we'll see if it's too similar to some of the other ones. Oh, that's the wrong note. There we go. Let me repeat it. I like the concept, but I think it is dissonant based on the distorted synth. Yeah, I do like the way the progression sounds, but it clashes. So we'd have to have like a part A and part B if we did that, which wouldn't be a bad idea. We just have to swap them out. Now I gotta make sure it doesn't clash with the bass line itself. No, I don't think it clashes too dramatically with the bass line. So we could definitely plug this in as like a part A, part B type thing where we have these switch off. So this is 3 and 4. Now it almost sounds like the harmony on this one is what's clashing. Where were we? We were down here, right? Yeah, I think I did clear this one off and redo it. It's the additional notes. I think it was not completely harmonized. It's a real subtle delay does change the way that sounds. Now, the real question is, if we add in the fourth synth pattern, does it still sound like it clashes? Definitely not as much. I think those can actually coexist now. I definitely think they'd have to be a bit lower in the mix so that they don't overpower the other tracks. Whoops, sorry. And sound too loud and blaring. All right, let's save our progress real quick before we get too much further. The ultimate results for this one, we're not done with it per se. We still have one more track we can try and slot in something. Maybe we pull in like real subtle strings. But it's definitely mellow and chill, but it's not... It sounds kind of dark. It's still kind of a mellow, chill, ambient sound. It sounds a little bit kind of dark and moody. Hey, Sourlad's here. What's up, Sourlad? Welcome to the Jam stream. How are you doing today? Hope you are having a good Sunday. We were tinkering around with some BGM ideas. This first one is a bit more mellow of a track, but like I was saying, it has kind of a darker feel to it. But let's see if we can layer in strings on the final track. Was one note off. This is the same note progression as the high synth, the beeping, but it's a chord instead of just one note. If we go higher. Ooh, not bad. Let's try that. drop that one down in the mix a bit more. Ooh, I missed the rhythm by like a half beat. No, I think it's on. There's a lot of stuff going on around it, so it sounded like it was slightly off. Oh, I do think the tail might have gotten a little bit screwed up, though. Yeah. There's like a little hiccup right at the beginning. That's not the biggest deal because when I'm actually structuring these and recording them, I'll just fade it in so you don't hear the little hiccup at the beginning. So it sounds like this. That's usually what I do on a lot of these tracks anyway. That way when different sections of the loop start and stop, they're not just boom abruptly coming in. I'll fade them in usually or fade them out so it doesn't sound like they're cutting off abruptly either. This is definitely not a drop-worthy song. I actually don't even think we would have part A's and part B's. I think this would just be a case of, as the track gets built, as it were, each of these parts are going to come in kind of in succession. Maybe a couple might drop out. Might do something like this. Drop the beat out for a second. And you play with it that way instead of having a distinct part A and part B. Okay. I think that is definitely functional. Let's save our progress. I think I'm gonna use what do I want to use that one for? I don't know exactly how I'm gonna use that. Depending on how I construct the rest of the chill release, which again it's not done. That one might be a really abrupt mood shift for something that's a bit more laid back and mellow, because it sounds kind of again dark and ominous. So I don't really know how I'm gonna use it yet, which is why I'm gonna hold on the name until I figure out what I'm gonna do with it, and then we'll come back to that in the future. I do think the results are pretty workable. I got to think about how I want to rearrange the song. So like let's run through kind of a practice run for how this would actually be recorded. I'm thinking it makes sense to have maybe the bass line start. And then give the bass line a couple cycles, then we bring in the beat. Then the first melody. Maybe bring in the second one. Nah, I don't think I like the bass line dropping out. Makes it sound kind of empty. Maybe do filter transition. We let the fourth synth completely repeat. So once it completes the second half, now we bring in the strings after we cut the filter transition off. And then maybe as we get ready to transition towards outro, we pull the rhythm off. And how it fades out completely to the outro is something I was thinking about. A couple different ideas. We could have all four of these going, and then we fade out each of the tracks till we're left with just the strings, kind of like this. And then we cut it off before it repeats. That's an option. I don't think I've done a whole lot of these loop tracks where the last thing you hear is the string melody. Usually it's the bass line or one of the other synth melodies, not usually the strings. To make a mental note of that, as I don't want these to all be recorded to start and stop the same way. I really don't want to have them all be similar sounding in structure, but that is something I will think about. We'll see if I remember by the time I get around to recording these. I'm going to need to do another large dump of files from the loop. I think there's maybe 6 or 7 that need to be recorded. And then we'll see. I'm at 56 now, so there's still a decent amount of space left. But let's try and do one more. So we'll save on a new file. We'll clear everything off, and let's try and do something different in tone, at least different in energy, if nothing else. So let's clear everything off so the loop tracks are blank. Save that. The first one was kind of a more chill and kind of darker ambient sound than I originally thought we were going to get. Let's do something a bit faster. We were talking about synthwave earlier. Maybe we could take a stab at synthwave again. And I think I know how I'm going to do it. So to start, let's cue up the rhythm. And I could probably use a combination of electronic drums for this. This is the electronic drum kit. Ooh, that one's got a bit more thump behind it. I think for linear cannons, the only other one I think I've gotten close to the synthwave type of sound is that one. Rather than have it double up at the end, because that one's kick rhythm went like... and then it doubled up at the end. When we have this one be straight quarter notes, and then we can mess around with the other parts of the rhythm around it. Okay. So we want kind of a medium tempo. Ow. Well, that's loud. We want, for the snare, I'm going to do the kick and the snare first, since that kind of establishes the rhythm for like a synthwave type song. It's usually like... I'm going to put hats in there too, I think, but it's 1, kicks on the 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. So for the snare, I want something a bit more muted. Ooh, that's kind of funky. This is the jazz snare. Sounds more like a like a symphonic snare almost. We can even mute it. We can go like a filtered snare and think about that. We could work with that. I think I need to drop the mix so it's not quite so sharp though. Okay. Now the hats. Doing this rapidly and having it be on time is gonna be tough because I had to do it by hand. Not bad for a first try. Okay, now the most important part, I think, for something, again, synthwave inspired, it's the bass line. We need to be able to have that kind of retro sounding, rapid bass line that sounds like kind of a classic like 80s synth. And to do that, we're going to definitely be slicing this one. This one's going to be 16th notes, I think. Yeah. And for the bass line, let's go up to the... Let's try the dance bass first. We're going to probably layer a couple different things to get it to actually sound the way we want. So we take this one. Yeah, okay. Might be a little low. There's a couple other ones here I can experiment around with. There's one specifically in the bass instrument set that really pairs well with the slicer to get that kind of synth-wavy sound, but I don't remember which one it is. No, it's not that one. This is actual synth bass. Oh yeah, this one fits a little bit better. Let's see what else we got. Fretless, has a bit of a distortion on it I don't like. I think synth bass is our best bet here. And we up the kind of sharpness of the slicer cutoff, so instead of it just being kind of a soft cutoff, it sounds more sharper like that. Now for the actual melody itself, where do we want to start? Oh, well, that's one thing I didn't think about. This synth bass doesn't sustain for very long. That's one thing I didn't count on. What if we went to strings? Oh, okay. We can do it with strings. We just have to go much lower in the register, I think. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Not bad. Let's get that captured. And now what we can do is we can go into the other bass instruments. Oh, made a mistake. That's definitely the rhythm and I think the note progression. I forgot to have guitar to bass on. No wonder it sounded kind of like it was empty. If we go too high with the guitar to bass, though, oh, maybe that note works better. Yeah, that actually sounds closer to what I wanted. Okay, let's get that captured. Okay, not bad. We can layer in some other bass sounds without the boost. We go really a lot lower. I don't know if I like it without the slice. Yeah, let's put the slicer back on. There you go. Now it sounds like there's kind of a low end complementing it. Okay. Now, next, we need an actual melody. We could go for like a different type of synth string instead of the bass one. For, again, synthwave type sound. Very common to have like the synthesizer strings in there. Playing around with the same melody, but slightly changing the rhythm. You could have it jump up right at the end, too. There is a weird distortion on that, which I don't know where that's coming from. Let's try this one. This is a different synth instrument. Okay, so far, this has potential. Let's go ahead and save our progress. I might have to play around with this one a little bit more. It's not done. I'm not done working on it right now. I'm just thinking about overall combination. Because it's got the core components for like a synthwave type track. If we turn it back on. It's got like the skeleton of something that sounds very kind of synthwavy in style. I'm just listening to the string rhythm. I think it's off. I think right at the end it's off by like a 8th beat. Ugh. Let's try that again. There we go. That's better. It was like it was hiccuping right at the end. Actually, let's save that with the updated version. What would make sense to add in as an additional instrument? That's what I'm sort of drawing a blank on. What if we go for our mainstay 329 and think about how we can take that instrument and then add in something that complements the 3 tracks we've got now? I want to at least do that before we start to wrap up for today. We're getting close to the end of time for the stream. But let's see. This is 329. Oh, we could slice this one and then maybe panning delay it so that it's going to move around. Oop, that's a lot of panning delay. This is like a counter melody. Closer. I'm not exactly sure what I want to do with that. We drop down to like the inverse of the last track. That's not bad. That's not bad. Maybe we harmonize this one. And this is going higher. That's not bad. Might drop the volume down a little. Yeah. I think that does work. Gotta be careful not to make this one too loud in the mix or it's gonna sound really kind of piercing in the ears. Thinking about adding in 329 in part of the bass line too. I think I've done that on a couple already. That's an interesting idea though. Kind of hard to hear though. Ah, that's the first note we're missing. Let's see if we can get that to work. It might be an interesting additional low-end sound we can have coming and going here. It does make it sound more video gamey. I'm going to keep that on track 5 as just something to play around with. I don't know if I'm going to keep it for the final version of this. But the rest of it, I think, does come together decently well. All right, let's save our progress and think about how we would structure this one. This is another one that I'm going to hold off on naming because I think I know what I'm going to use it for already. And I won't talk too much more about it. It's for something that I think I've mentioned once, but for now I'm going to keep it as kind of like a side project. But for this one, I'm thinking kind of in line with how a lot of synthwave is structured. We start with the bass line and the rhythm at the same time. So we go. Then we bring in. You have to fade in the strings because there's a slight hiccup at the beginning from the tail. Then maybe we do something like we drop the rhythm out, we get ready to bring in the next synth. This one's going to sort of take control of the melody, be what the listener hears kind of first and foremost. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do it that fifth one. And we have this repeat for a few cycles. We talked about this on the last one, so I don't know if I'd structure it exactly the same way. But maybe we end with the fourth synth. That's a possibility. Again, I'll have to check some of the other tracks and compare when I actually record this and see how I want it to end and kind of wind up. But I think that will definitely be functional for the track. This one at the end, I don't know when we do it this one yet. It's fun, but I don't know if it fits. I think it sort of creates some distracting additional noise in the background while not really following, because it's the same notes as the bass line, but not the same rhythm. It does pair okay with just the bass line, but I don't know. I'm just gonna keep it there. I might just not include it in the final mix. I will decide that later. But okay, that is definitely functional. I think we will call that a session before we jump off. Let me pull up the list and see who we can send over all of the vibes to in raid. Wow, let's see. Truck is online. They are playing Valorant again. Let's see. We could go over there. Not a lot of folks I know are online at the moment. We are a bit early on a Sunday. Yeah, let's go raid truck Sama, one of my VTuber peers. Let me cue that up, and we will go ahead and mute this and go to outro. Whoops, I need to grab something else. One sec. There we go. All right, and yeah, like I said, we will head over there and see how Truck Sama's doing. Thanks again for hanging out, folks. It was an interesting discussion on the topic of beatboxing and beatboxing stuff. The BGM side, we did get 2 things done, so that's good. I'm pleased with what we did today, and I'll have to tinker around with the recordings a bit more, but I think we did pretty good. I need to work on the schedule for next week. I don't know what days I am streaming yet. It's going to be primarily video game stuff next week. We may or may not be starting some new things. That's what I got to figure out for the end of the day today. Either way, I'll put the schedule up in the Discord and on Twitter once I figure it out. So in the meantime, hope you all have a good rest of your evening, afternoon, morning, and I will catch you in the next stream. Now let's commence the raid.